Hello, welcome back to everyone. We are doing the AMC Lives again. Today, I have the honored guest, Leach. I met him on Facebook. He's very experienced in terms of HELOC, IBC, velocity banking. We are so thrilled to have you here, Kent. Can you start with some quick introduction? What are you doing? Where are you from?
Sure, Jing. Yeah, I'm located in East Tennessee, just outside of Knoxville. You probably figured that out from the accent. I've been investing close to 25 years. So when I
Wow.
first got out of school as a physical therapist and started working, figured out pretty quick that I was going to need to have a side gig. So I started flipping homes and started learning how to do short sales and got in that way. And it wasn't until about 13 years ago, when I was 37 years old, that I learned about infinite banking. But today I run a small fund. We're sitting at about $2.5 million. We raise money for small, not really small deals, but as a group, we raise money. We go into syndications together and different things. We've had deals together, and I really enjoyed that as well. Also a business owner, a healthcare business that's still related to rehab therapy.
Nice, really nice. Talk a little bit. I know you have a sizable different policies you use for IBC. What was this IBC concept introduced to you, and how you paved the way to start funding, start using? Talk about a little bit on that.
Yeah, I remember specifically hearing a radio commercial 13 to 14 years ago about some kind of way to create your own bank. And I called the number, set up a visit with the agent, and he gave me Nelson Nash's book at that moment. So I read that book. I don't know exactly how long it took me to get on board, but met with him a few times, and he showed me some illustrations, showed me what it could do. And that's when I decided to jump in and create my first policy.
Which was how many years ago?
It was probably, it was 13 years. That's one good thing
13
about
years
policies.
ago.
You know exactly. So I think got it pretty quickly. I knew there was something to it right away. I don't think I delayed. The problem came after that. And that was when I grew up a big Dave Ramsey fan. I read Dave's book when I was probably a teenager. And so I had these things in my head. And I remember listening to Dave Ramsey and hearing him really just go off against whole life. And it scared
Yes.
me. And it really made me abandon that first policy I built. Should be so much better if I hadn't listened to Dave Ramsey.
Yes, that's great. So as of now, you have multiple policies. Talk about where you are now in terms of IBC.
Yeah, this year we funded our 8th and 9th policies, and that's on my wife and I, 3 children. And I'm also proud because I was just telling you, my 19-year-old son started a policy about 3 months ago, and my 21-year-old is starting his own policy. So that'll be number 10 and number 11 in the family. But I'm really proud that those guys will actually control those policies themselves.
That's nice. And when they're in their mid-age, it could be a very significant, sizable bank for them to use. And the access to the cash, the flexibility, the world is endless for them in terms of this IBC, starting at age 19 or 21. So when you set up the policies, how do you decide each policy, the premium amount? How do you budget?
So that's a great question. When I created that first policy, I remember thinking, how are we going to do this? And I really think it's important that your first policy be big enough, because Jing, I've never heard anybody say my first policy was too big. I really haven't. Most people go the wrong direction. They go too small. When I first created that policy, Jing, I was a W-2 employee, just like a lot of people listening to this. I was just working, receiving a paycheck every 2 weeks. But for me at the time, I liquidated a 401k to do that. And for me, having that control was important. And then again, that policy, I ended up derailing that policy because of Dave Ramsey. I did fund that first year really good. And I never quit funding it, but I could have funded, I don't mind telling you, that was a $25,000 policy. I could have funded $25,000 for 4 or 5 years. I only funded the 25 for the first year, and then I think I funded 8. This was a typical 40-60 policy. I only funded 8 from there on out, but I missed that opportunity. I actually called that agent a couple years ago to see if it had any more room, and the way that policy was designed, it couldn't hold anymore. So I just missed that. But I've made up with the other policies. I really think 30% of your income, and I know for some people, it's not the same for everybody, but Nelson Nash says we're spending 30% of our income is going into somebody else's bank. And when you realize that infinite banking is just trying to find a way to flip your debt into policies. So I think a family that's making $100,000 a year should be able to comfortably start a $30,000 policy. They might need a windfall to do that, but I don't think it's the end of the world to take some money from a 401k to do that. That's me personally. I just don't like the government controlling when I have access to my money.
Yes, that's a big move, but the control and the flexibility, those are super important. You mentioned the 40-60. Can you explain to the audience what this 40-60? I know because I'm an agent, right? So the 40-60 What did you know you need to do the 1090 or it's just designed that way?
I think there's a lot of debate right now, and you probably know
Yes.
that, between the 1090 and the 4060. My agents have always just been really conservative, and I don't know, it's funny, you've got people that say Nelson Nash would say this versus that. I think the base premium is something you want to be able to pay for a long time.
Yes.
And there's probably different opinions on that, but that base, and I've got a lot of things I want to say, but somebody understands IBC when they say, how long can I pay premium for versus when can I stop paying this premium? They don't get it when they're saying those things. So I think a little bit bigger base, even though it may be slower cash value growth, we're looking at a longer time frame. We're looking at the ability to be putting that base premium. So like that 4060 on a $10,000 policy, that base is $4,000 a year on that 10. You're going to be able to put that base in longer. And I just think that's important when you get there. Most people have to really flip their mindset. I'm not thinking retirement. I'm thinking when I'm 70 years old, I'm going to take $4,000 and put into that policy, and that $4,000 is going to create $20,000 worth of growth inside the cash value. So just thinking long term, that's one of his 5 sayings, right?
Definitely. And it's a bank, right? When we talk about bank, do you want 10,000 there or you want 10 million there, right? The more you put in, the more you have the control and the more you could go take money out and do whatever investment, which is your favorite. So I think there's a lot of turning point for people when they think about this IBC. You're not buying an IBC policy. You are building up your bank. When you get started, is there like a benchmark or milestones you are aiming on? How do you keep track your progress? When do you decide I need the next policy?
Yeah, we've been blessed that I was able to purchase a business about 7 years ago. And at one point I was the only employee in that business, and now that's grown to employ 25 different therapists. So milestones came as our income increased. And what we have to realize is most of us are going to see income increases. We're going to see a different job. We're going to see a raise. Wherever your income is coming from, you've got to overcome that human condition, which says, instead of spending that raise, you've got to find ways to keep more of your money. And Nelson Nash said it with all the chapters that confuse people about the human condition, Murphy's Law, all those things. Your desire is going to increase with that income that you're getting. So I've always related it to that. If I've gotten an increase in income, it's time to start a new policy. If I don't have a place to put more premium, I need to start another policy. And I think that's another reason why the 4060 design, they fill up. You'll be able to pay like $10,000 a year for 4 or 5 years, but then the time will come when it won't accept any more PUA, paid up additions. And so once that happens, then you look around, you realize I need to create another policy, and it's just a natural evolution that occurs if you understand the concept of infinite banking, not just owning policies.
Exactly. And then that's what I tell people, right? We're building the bank. You don't want to stuff money, or you want to stuff money first, but secondly, you want to take the money out, make the money working for you, make more money using the pile of money. So let me ask you this. You mentioned about taking from 401k. That's a really bold move. How do you want to take that ownership? What's the tipping point? You say, okay, I don't want to have that 401k. I want this pile of money. I really want that ownership, the control.
Yeah, I think it starts with education, and when you start to trust yourself more than you trust other people with your money. And I think for me, that came really quickly. I had one run in with Krispy Kreme donut stock when I was probably 24, 25 years old. I thought that they were the best thing you could ever put in your mouth. And I decided to invest, I think it was $2,000. And over 6 months, I watched something called the Atkins diet take off and just crush Krispy Kreme. And I lost probably 80% of the value of that Krispy Kreme stock. For me, that was just, I'm not going to invest in something I don't have at least a little bit of control, because I had no control. And today it's even worse. Now that we have social media and tweets, you can see Wall Street, you can see stocks dip 30% just on a tweet from the president. So for me, it was education to a point where I knew I could do better with that money. That's changed over time. Initially, it was flipping houses. So I wanted to be able to borrow from policies to flip houses. And then it became more passive deals and bigger deals.
Yeah, that's super important to really have that self-education, right? You control your money. That's your wealth you're building in your life. And that's 100% control. Not make Uncle Sam go away, but to extend, try to shift into the tax-free bucket, right? That's by law. I'm putting in the Roth self-directed Roth account, Roth IRA, Roth Solo 401k. So talk about a little bit on the HELOC side. I know you have sizable HELOC and then its first lien position. That's another bank we're talking.
Initially, I would say 13 years ago when I started infinite banking, another goal thanks to Dave Ramsey, was to have a paid for house. So over time, we've settled into we've been at the same house now for nearly 12 years. And most people, if you've done that, you've seen a sizable increase in equity in your house. And we've paid down our mortgage quite a bit. And we got within a point where we could see that we weren't far away from paying off our mortgage. But for me, having a paid for mortgage used to be a status kind of thing. But now I started thinking, do I really want this? Because do I really want to pay for a house and have that equity sitting idle? So for me, with the education and knowing that I have a really good network of fund managers that do what I do, and we come across really good deals from time to time. Some of them are passive, some of them are active. But I just want to be able to access that equity. So I went ahead and got the all-in-one or the first position HELOC. There was some ballast there. In order to get that first position, I had to be willing to retire a really good mortgage, but we only had a little bit to go on it. And it made sense for me. It might not for everybody. Some people would probably say I was silly for paying off a mortgage in the high twos to step into a HELOC with the flexibility that comes from the all-in-one mortgage. But we did it. We've only been doing that for about 6 months now. But it's been a great tool for me. And it's nice having that kind of liquidity to jump on opportunities.
Definitely. I think it's another bold move, right? Why you pay the high twos mortgage interest rate, even as a small balance. But it makes sense to pay that gradually in a normal thinking versus get another HELOC, which the interest rate will be much higher compared to your regular mortgage. But what's your plan to utilize? Now you have two piles of money, your bank, the HELOC bank and the IBC bank. What's your plan moving forward? What's your view of utilizing all the cash you have accumulated on both banks?
Yeah. Like Nelson Nash says, when you have access to cash, the opportunities will chase you down. So that's why I'm doing what I do. I really consider myself a full-time investor from day to day. I spend a little bit of time each week helping my wife run her other business, but I'm looking for opportunities. Those are in things like commercial real estate. We've invested in a marina. We've invested in some mobile home park related investments, some debt. So we make loans. We've looked at a lot of multifamily, but haven't done that quite yet. Raised for some private equity, some kind of startups that are a little bit riskier, but we've done a lot of different things. And you have to, over time, my ability to do things has grown, and I still am focused on diversification, which very few people do. I see a lot of people get into the apartment syndication world and they just really focus in on multifamily. And unfortunately, the multifamily market has taken a pretty hard fall with some adjustable rates over the last few years. So I've talked to people on almost a weekly basis who've lost equity in that game, but it's a big responsibility to have basically two lines of credit. You've got my policies that cash value is close to $1 million and then about that much in equity in my home. So I have to be very responsible with that. My wife is a good sounding board as well. Most of our spouses will keep us from doing stupid.
It's a teamwork, right? It's your household's asset, your legacy you could pass down to your heirs. So you mentioned several different investments, different mobile home, marina. What's the deciding factor when some opportunities come to your way? How do you decide which one to use and what will be the one you think will be a good investment strategy based on your two banks you're trying to utilize?
That was the reason I created my fund, honestly. If you think you know everything, like Nelson says, you think you have arrival syndrome, you've arrived, well, that's a dangerous place to be. So I went out seeking friends who knew more than I did, and I brought value too, but it's more of a group that I'm part of several groups, and we vet deals together, and we try to figure out where the puck is going, right? Not where it's at now, but what are the investments that are going to be big over the next few years? Which ones are struggling right now? So we're going to where the money's going, hopefully. Right now, it seems to be a lot of private debt. People jumping into syndications for equity, and equity has been proven to be a risky play. That's what we were just talking about. When you're making loans and you're doing it against secured assets, you're in a first position. The equity gets wiped out first, then it comes down to the bank. And we know the bank's smart, right? That's why we're trying to create our own banks. Banks
exactly
rarely lose money. And when they do, they usually can liquidate an asset to recoup a lot of that back. For me, it's not trusting myself, but vetting deals together with a group of people. And when we decide it meets, everybody has different criteria. I like to try to double my money every 5 years. Some of my investments are on track to do that. Some aren't, but you have to weigh risk. And very few retail investors understand how to weigh risk against returns. And we see some really nice risk-rated returns right now in private debt. We're getting the same kind of returns, maybe doubling your money in 5-6 years that you could get in a multifamily investment, but we're not having to take on the same risk.
Yeah, I think going to the group, it's just taking a big picture and then narrow it down and analyze each deal That is super important. Moving forward, do you feel overwhelmed with managing this, or you want to really grow this to tenfold of what you have now? What's your goal and what's your view on that?
As my fund grows, it's harder to manage it. We're in the middle of a raise right now, and we've raised about $450,000 for an asset. I have about 30 investors in my fund. So right now, that's fine. For me personally, I'm investing alongside them. I'm vetting the deals anyway, so I enjoy it. It's not a part-time job. It's a full-time job to be looking at things. And we're looking at 5 or 10 opportunities a week, but really only one a week that we're really just focused in on, and then it will fall out. So it just depends. But for me, I'm going to keep looking at these opportunities. And as long as people want to invest alongside me, I'll let them. That's wonderful. But I'm investing my money anyway. I just invite people to invest alongside me. And yeah, I'm not going to stop. I love alternative investments. I'm not a big fan of the stock market. I can actually say I have zero money in the stock market. And even though it's had a great 10 years, right? I just want my money where in intangible assets where I can actually pick up the phone. Most of my investments, I can pick up the phone and talk to who's running that investment or operating that investment. They may or may not listen to me, but at least I know who's at the steering wheel.
Yeah, that's a complete shift, right? Some people, they want their money in stock market. For people like us, we practice IBC. We try to build our own bank ourselves, the Roth account. We don't want the money in the stock market because we have zero control. Yes, you could do an analysis, you could a different chart and projections, but we want that 100% control. That is super important. I think especially when people are aging, the less exposure to the market, the much better you could sleep tight at night.
I'm like you, I'm a control freak as well. But a lot of my investments are passive. I do have some things that I have to step into each day, but it comes down to relationships and trust and track record and really knowing how to vet a deal. And it is a skill. It's a team skill to know how to vet a deal, an apartment deal. You need somebody that's doing background checks and talking to previous investors. You need somebody that's diving into the numbers, which really isn't my forte. I've got friends that are engineers and they love the numbers part of it. And then you need people looking at the market who maybe they're a broker and they've got access to all kinds of software or different things. So as a team, we can really break down a deal and find where the weaknesses are. And once we find a certain number of red flags, we're done. We're off to the next one. And that takes a lot of the pressure off, I think you're asking me about. I enjoy it. I don't see it as pressure. The investors that are with me, I'm not on the other side like some co-GP situation, and that went on a lot. You'll see capital raisers come along and they've got a group of people behind them that are friends and family and coworkers, and they'll cross over that LPGP line, which is the limited partnership and the general partnership. I'm an advocate for my investors. If they lose money, I lose money. There's not some secret way that I get paid that they don't. And so I'm always vetting these operators like they would be. For me, that helps take some of the pressure off.
Definitely. I want to talk a little bit about the discipline. I'm sure with where you are now financially, it's a lot of daily routine or success tips you could give because you've done a lot, right? Funding that 11 policies, make sure the premium, whenever that premium is due, you have the money to fund it. Can you talk a little bit about from that perspective?
I think one of the things that my wife and I decided, or really me, is that we're only going to access about 2/3 to 3/4 of the capability. So if we have access to $1 million of cash value, I'm not willing to go over 750,000 of that. And the same with the line of credit. So that way I know I've got that buffer zone. We're responsible for payrolls and things that are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. A lot of money flows through our hands, and that it's easier. And once you become a business owner, there's so many things that open up to you, and IBC becomes a tenfold better tool than it is just for a W-2. Not that it's not valuable for anybody, but you're right, and it's gradual, and I guess I don't see it as discipline. And honestly, IBC gives you some flexibility with your budget. You don't, and I'm not the best budgeter in the world, and I'm not a very analytic person, but our cash flow is always growing. So I hate to say that we can't outspend it, because sometimes it just feels like it's growing as fast as we can almost spend. And we've got kids that are in college, about to go to college. We're at a very expensive point in our life where a lot of money's going out, but we're thankful we have a business and it's doing very well too. So it's income driven. We do keep tabs on where things are at. And like I say, we've set those safeguards up to help us stay disciplined. Other tips, I'm a morning reader. I love to read, and I'm on social media as much as anybody, but I really try to focus in on educational things. And there's so much content and so many things on YouTube, so many videos that'll teach you how to velocity bank, how to set things up. There's almost too much information. We have to decide what to filter out. But I don't really like the word discipline, but I try my best.
It's not discipline. It's the way you do things. Try to make it on the right track. Do the right thing. Always. Yes. Do you have any word for people who tend to be over leveraged or they just make impulsive decisions? I think although you say you're not very analytical,
Yeah.
but I'm sure you're very calm and pretty conservative, I'll say as well.
I would say the more I've looked at it, that your debt can actually be the ticket to your wealth. And there's strategies out there with infinite banking and with velocity banking where, like I say, if you can take 30%, if you can just get that little bit, a little bit ahead, maybe a tax return that's a little bit bigger, instead of attacking that debt with that, let's say that big tax return or that windfall of some sort, start a policy, then attack that debt. And when you start that policy, you're planting a tree that's never going to get cut down. And that tree's going to grow and grow. And we know how that analogy works, and more rings and more growth. And it's just people aren't funneling. They're not starting. If you'll start your money in the right place and then funnel it to the right areas, you can pretty much flip that debt into debt that you owe yourself. And then you can take longer to pay it off, or you can add to the capability of that bank. Because it's not so bad when you're $30,000 in debt to yourself versus $30,000 in debt to somebody else's bank.
Exactly.
So, that's what I would say. You can't just go out there and be spending money like crazy, but your debt doesn't have to be your downfall. It can actually be the ticket to starting to grow your wealth.
Yes, that's another thing we were talking about, although Dave Ramsey is all about eliminating debt, right? Even if we use leverage, that's a debt. There's a good debt because it generates cash flow. There's money putting in your pocket. So don't be afraid of that, but don't over leverage and don't just go in without proper education, proper planning. So I know there's a lot of people, they're still young or they haven't heard anything about IBC, the HELOC, velocity banking. Is there any couple of piece of advice you could give for them how they could start?
If you're sitting on home equity, don't think it's a bad idea to use some home equity to start a policy. That's an idea or a philosophy that I've probably gotten more comfortable with. But I do know that right now, a lot of people are sitting on a lot of home equity. And so if you've not, like I say, you need a windfall. Sometimes you need a windfall to get started, not always. And some people make monthly payments, but I've always just created my policies with lump sums. So a home equity line might be the way that you can get that $25,000 to start that policy. And then you can take, depending on the policy design, 10 to 12,000 of that, maybe more, maybe 15, and go attack some debt if you're still in debt. If not, maybe you can go make a loan with that. Or you know what, maybe you can just let it sit there, because Nelson almost always just says you're just going to build your bank for 4 or 5 years, and that's perfectly fine too while you're learning how to put that money to work. But I'm not against it. I think a second position HELOC or a first position HELOC can give you the fuel to plant that first tree. And then after a few years, guess what? You're going to be able to do another one. And you may have an extra 10, 15,000 over here, and then you could put it with a little bit of money for the HELOC, and then you can go start your second policy, which might be a $30,000 or $40,000 policy. Those are the policies that down the road, depending on your age, those are the ones that are going to be the most efficient. Your oldest policies are your most efficient. And so I see a lot of people that just can't take action, or just can't get over how big the first one. Start that policy, but don't underfund it. Don't ever be afraid to capitalize. That's what Nelson says. And I think that first policy should make you a little bit nervous, but knowing that you're going to have access to every dollar you put in these policies over your lifetime should help to ease that.
Definitely. Yeah, I think it's very important to educate first, but take action. We could always in a loophole of learning, especially at this DNA age. Like you mentioned, information is everywhere. All kinds of educational pieces, this infomercial, that infomercial. We could easily be in the shiny object syndrome, just learning. Never start doing anything.
I'm a professional squirrel chaser. So if you just look at my career, I have chased a lot of shiny objects. But you do at some point, you've got to quit learning and you got to take action. And we're in a time where the information and education is overwhelming. At some point, you have to decide who you're going to listen to. You're going to have to cut off some of the noise and follow somebody. And you don't have to invent these things. I was talking with somebody yesterday at lunch. I'm a world-class copycat. It's not like we have to invent infinite banking. It's already been done. The book's been written. The policies are available. You just have to make sure they're designed the right way. It's all there in front of us. It's easy to get overwhelmed with the information, and it's real easy to get into the numbers of a policy and start trying to compare an IRR inside a policy. I've never really done that, Gene. I've trusted my agent to design those policies. He chooses my companies, and maybe someday I'll regret that. I just want those, like we say, those trees planted, and I want them done because time is of the essence. When you're talking about infinite banking, you're talking about the compounding of money. We all know there's nothing you can do. You can't go back and plant that tree 10 years ago. The only thing you can do is plant it today.
plan it now. Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. I want to ask you how you educate your kids. You apparently educate them well, right? They know they want to start IBC. They are doing the IBC. Any tips on that perspective?
I think it's important as soon as you're able, and we weren't able to start policies really early. When I think about it, probably 5 years ago is when we did our kids, because we wanted to make sure we were putting money in for us, but letting your kids know that you're starting a small $5,000 policy on them and showing them what's going to happen. My kids have just been immersed in it. We just talk it. It's the language we talk. And when we go buy a car, I was taking money from the policy and showing the kids how we're not going to use the bank. I talk to my kids about how we're on track, that they may never need a bank for anything. They may not need a bank for their own mortgages. Someday I see myself at 75 years old and my children are paying back mortgages to our family bank. And when you look at where we're at now with the average house being a $500,000 house and the payment on that home is probably $3,500 a month, imagine 3 children paying back into policies that someday they're going to inherit anyway. That excites me. IBC takes the worry of retirement. I don't think I'll ever retire, but income during my old age is not even a worry anymore. It's such a relief because I know that we'll be able to make these loans. And what's the safest people pay? There's nothing safer than making a loan on a piece of property that your own family owns. They're going to pay it back. And as they do, there's very little risk in that. And then you can see, wow, those policies would be recouping 10, 11, 12,000 a month just from mortgage payments from my kids. So that's an idea right there. Think about that and think about how big a policy would need to be to do that, and then start planting those trees today.
Yeah, that could be a good legacy to pass down to your kids as well. We all know because it's a life insurance policy, yes, we're tapping into the loan for the cash value, but remember, there's a big umbrella of the life insurance itself. So it could magnify when we pass it down to the next generation.
So I bribed my kids to read this book. So I bribed them to read Robert Kiyosaki's The Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Actually, Cash Flow Quadrant is my favorite, the second. So, but I paid my kids to do that. And if you're going to give them allowance, or if they're going to get money anyway, at least make them do something. And 2 of my 3 kids are on board. My 2 boys, my daughter, she's coming around slowly, but you've got to teach this stuff because they're not teaching it in school. And not only are they not teaching it in school, they're going to learn some worse habits along the way too.
Definitely. So it's all about you doing it and you pass it down for them to really do it. The mindset, the regular reinforcement, like what you're doing, showing them how you can tap into your cash value to buy the car instead of going to a random bank and try to get a loan because they are making money out of that car loan. But now everything is inside of your household. It's super important for them to learn that real world experience. I want to ask you a little bit about your fund. Who will be the ideal clients, or who do you want? People who have sitting idle solo 401k, or you want help people, just you educate them and participate in your capital company? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I created my fund 2 years ago for friends and family to join me. Now, unfortunately, you have to be an accredited investor, which means you have to have a certain level of income as an individual, 200,000 a year, or as a couple, 300, or you have to have a net worth of $1 million. Now, that is to join my fund. You have to have those, and I have to third-party verify it. But we invest in all kinds of things, all kinds of alternative assets. We're always looking for that to diversify. But it is important. And yesterday I spent time talking to my investors. I almost try to talk people out of investments. I want to make sure it's right for them. I want to make sure it fits their kind of investor DNA and their timeline and their risk profile. Sometimes the risk is too high and you just don't need to invest. But it's just amazing how many people don't know how to vet deals and understand risk. And a lot of people don't know the difference between saving and investing. And IBC is something I try to point people towards for saving, because it is a forced savings account, but you can invest from that. I would probably discourage people from taking money from a HELOC to invest in my fund, but I would not have a problem with somebody taking money from a HELOC to put into infinite banking at all. The SEC created the accredited investment status, accredited investor status, is just to protect the little guy, and not to be demeaning or anything like that, but you do need a certain level of sophistication and income because we will eventually lose money. When you're in these alternative assets, you're probably eventually going to run into one that doesn't perform like you thought. And like I say, I know a lot of people who got phone calls in the past year saying that $50,000 equity investment in an apartment building is gone. They had to turn the keys into the bank. The loan was for $30 million, and now the apartment complex was purchased for $40 million, and now it's worth $30. And unfortunately, that $10 million of the equity is gone, and that can happen. So I make sure my investors understand that when they go into alternative assets.
Definitely. It's all about risk return, right? Education is the most important piece. when you take action, you know what you're getting into. Not every investment is safe. Actually, a lot of investment is not safe, like what you mentioned. When we put this video up, do you want us to put your company information there? So if they are accredited investor, they can reach out and talk to people from your company.
Yeah, sure. They can go to 865invest.com. That's a landing page to get on my email list. I'm on LinkedIn under Kent Leach. I'm also on Facebook quite a bit still, and you can find me at those places. But yeah, 865invest.com is the best place to go.
That's great. Yeah, I really appreciate your time, and it's super important to get to the I quadrant, the investor, right? I think a lot of people, they read the Rich Dad Poor Dad book, but they don't really drill down. They say, oh, it's important. Oh, this is good. Real estate investment is the key. But they don't take action. They don't really think about how they could get from employee to self-employed to business owner, then ultimate goal investor, like where you are sitting.
We could do a whole nother call, Jing, on that. I do love real estate, but I will tell you, I think there's been more millionaires created from business ownership. Small business ownership is really when our financial picture turned around. So I would encourage people to educate themselves on business ownership, and whatever they're doing, somebody probably owns that firm, right? There's somebody that owns that construction company. Someone owns that electrical contractor company. Do the research, find out. Now here's the ticket. When an opportunity comes along, IBC gives us the ability to take advantage. And I always ask people, if your rich uncle called you and wanted to sell you his company, and he said, I need you to give me $250,000 by next Friday, could you get it? Could you get access to it? And most people would have to try to liquidate a 401k. They wouldn't have it. And that's why I wanted my money free, that when those opportunities come along, which might be business ownership, that's why I wanted to do IBC. I wanted the freedom to control my money and to use it for the investments that I wanted. And business ownership is a huge one. It's been instrumental in the building of our wealth.
Yes, it's a golden ticket. You can just snap it because you have that two piles of bank money inside of your household you could tap into. Definitely. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you come on to the Altus Millionaire Club Live, and we will invite you again, talk about how to become your own investor status. Stay in that quadrant, right? Multiply your wealth and pass it down to your heirs and influence other people like what you are doing. I know you do a lot of education piece as well. I really appreciate your time coming here and share this with us.
Thank you for having me, Jing.
Appreciate it. Okay, great. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate
welcome.
your time. Yeah, I'll let you go to your busy day.
All right.
Thanks,
see you.
Ken. Appreciate
Bye-bye.
it. Thank you. Bye-bye.